An ambulance? No, we can't call one, my husband shouted, panic evident in his voice. After years apart, we had finally reunited with Naomi, and in her arms was a small child. As I looked closer, it became clear that Naomi was noticeably pregnant. The unexpected situation left my mind blank for a moment, but I quickly realized they needed help. That's when Naomi made a special request. My name is Mary, and I'm 60 years old. I now assist my husband, Isaac, who works as a potter. After graduating from college, I worked as a general office clerk. However, I met Isaac through a pottery event. The event displayed and sold pottery, and there was also an area where you could try your hand at pottery making. Though I had little interest in pottery at the time, a poster at the city hall caught my eye, so I decided to visit. As I wandered around, I found the pottery experience area and learned pottery from Isaac. The experience sparked a deep fascination with pottery in me, and I began visiting his home and workshop to see more of his work. Isaac remembered me, and each time we met, we had engaging conversations. Eventually, our relationship transformed from craftsman and customer to lovers, and after 3 years of dating, we married. Isaac always encouraged me to pursue what I loved, but I was so captivated by pottery that I decided to support his work. By the time we married, his parents had already retired from pottery, which made me even more determined to stand by his side. Amidst all this, we were blessed with a daughter, whom we named Naomi. We showered her with love and affection. When Naomi was 3, Isaac and I wanted her to appreciate the charm of pottery, so we took her to the workshop and let her touch and shape the clay. Naomi showed a natural talent, creating beautiful pieces and taking great joy in her work. As she grew, she expressed a desire to continue the family business, brightening our future even more. Isaac had several apprentices who were all kind and welcoming to the idea of Naomi working there in the future. After graduating high school, Naomi went on to university, where she studied not only pottery but also Japanese history and cultural arts. On holidays and days off from class, she helped with the family business, honing her skills. Thanks to Isaac's guidance from a young age, her talents developed impressively, astonishing everyone around her. However, Naomi never became arrogant. Instead, she continued her efforts to spread the charm of pottery throughout Japan, working closely with her disciples. 5 years passed since Naomi graduated from university, and as she approached 30, we often marveled at how quickly she had grown. Then one day, Naomi shared some surprising news. "Mom, I'm getting married." Married? I exclaimed in shock at her sudden announcement. Naomi had a boyfriend since her university days, and while I had anticipated that they might eventually marry, hearing the news still left me speechless. His name was Sean. I had spoken with him several times and felt he was a very good person. Later, Naomi explained the circumstances leading up to their marriage. It seems he had first proposed right after she graduated, but at the time she wanted to focus on continuing the family's pottery business and asked him to wait a little longer. Sean respected her wishes and continued to propose over the years. Time passed, and one day when Naomi felt ready to make a decision, she opened her social media and saw photos of her classmates with their children. Seeing their happiness, she realized it might be time for her to marry too. Everyone's married with children, and I'm still not, she thought to herself. After reflecting on it, she decided, I want to marry Sean. If that's your choice, we have nothing against it, I told her. Thank you, she replied. Naomi had set a few conditions before accepting Sean's proposal. She wanted to continue working as before and wasn't considering having children for a while. While her classmates with children seemed happy, she wished to maintain her current lifestyle even after marrying. Sean agreed, and they decided to move forward with the marriage. However, I knew that inevitable changes in lifestyle might arise, and Naomi could find some of these unknown changes confusing. I heard that their new home would be near ours, and I wanted to offer as much support as possible. Feel free to ask us about anything, I told her. Yes, thank you so much, Naomi replied. The reality of my daughter getting married was still sinking in, and I felt a mix of excitement and nerves when Naomi talked about it. But after hearing her thoughts, I was relieved to know she had made a well-considered decision. I had been hoping Naomi would build a happy family, but this marriage would soon reveal Sean's true character, drastically altering her once joyful life. After leaving home, Naomi started a new life with Sean, and even after their marriage, she frequently returned to her parents' home, allowing us to maintain the close relationship we always had. However, about 6 months into the marriage, we were suddenly informed that they would be moving far away due to a transfer from Sean's company. Sean had known about the potential transfer before marrying Naomi, but had kept it a secret, likely fearing she would leave him if she knew. This revelation made me doubt Sean and wonder if he genuinely considered Naomi's feelings. I asked her, "Are you sure this is okay? Isn't it possible for him to go alone?" Naomi replied that she had suggested staying behind to continue her job, but Sean insisted that he needed her with him. She decided to comply with his request, remembering how he had cared for her in the past. I chose to remain silent, and soon after, Naomi and Sean moved away, leaving me deeply saddened. The students and I, who had spent so much time together with her, felt her absence acutely, which only reaffirmed her importance to us. Half a year later, on what seemed like an ordinary day, I received an astonishing call from Naomi. She had given birth to a child. This was my first grandchild, and while I was overjoyed, questions began to arise. Considering the timing of their move, she must have been pregnant when they left. She had previously mentioned not wanting children for a while, so what changed her mind? And why decide to have a child knowing they were moving? These thoughts began to spread through my mind. When I asked about Naomi's well-being, she assured me everything was fine. If she said it was all right, I felt it wasn't my place to worry further. I ended the call by reminding her that she could always return home if needed. After discussing the situation with Isaac, we concluded that since Sean seemed to be harboring doubts, but Naomi insisted everything was fine, it was better not to pry too deeply. We decided to stay in touch, ready to act immediately if anything happened. However, since the birth of our grandchild, we had received no news and our worry began to grow. When I couldn't bear it any longer, I tried to contact her, but it was Sean, not Naomi, who answered the phone. "Sean, where's Naomi?" "She's in the bath right now." "I see, I understand," I replied, though I felt uneasy. After Naomi became a full-time housewife and started her new life, I tried calling her cell phone during the day but got no response. When I called again at night, it was Sean who answered, saying Naomi was in the bath, and I couldn't speak to her. I couldn't understand why Sean was always the one answering when I was clearly calling Naomi's number. "Why is it always you answering? I call during the day, and nobody picks up." "She's in the bath, I told you," he replied, "even in the daytime, I don't know." I was shocked and lost for words at Sean's defiant response. Sensing my silence, he quickly ended the call. Since then, each time I tried to reach her, Sean would come up with reasons like, "The baby is crying, so please stop calling," or, "Isn't this getting a bit excessive?" My suspicion toward Sean only grew, but I was completely taken aback when I finally heard the reason behind his attitude. "The truth is, Naomi doesn't want to have anything to do with you anymore. Could you please stop calling?" he said. "What? Why would she say that? Are you sure this is really what Naomi wants? Your parenting was too strict. She's actually been wanting to leave for a while. She had her apprentices and couldn't easily break away, but now she's out and truly happy. That can't be. Do you think we're deceiving you? Don't you find it strange that your calls don't connect during the day? Naomi is avoiding contact with you. It's about time you understand that." I was utterly shocked. I was at a loss for words, stunned into silence as Sean continued, "Can't you tell by my attitude? Let me be clear, we're bothered by you. I wondered when you'd realize it, but you're incredibly oblivious. If you had noticed from the start, you'd have seen that Naomi never suffered as much as you think. You're too slow to notice anything. That's your answer, so please don't contact us again," he said, and then hung up the phone. "Wait, just a moment," I called out, but my words didn't reach him. After the call ended, I was left with nothing but a sense of emptiness. I tried calling again the next day at noon, but it seemed Sean had blocked my calls, likely to shield Naomi. Reflecting on Sean's past behavior and statements, I began to understand. Was Naomi truly afraid of us? The thought alone made sadness well up within me. When my husband, Isaac, returned home, I explained the situation about Sean and Naomi. He looked just as sad and lost for words as I was. "So we should probably not get involved anymore, right?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, the reality sinking in. I never imagined Naomi was going through such hard times. We fully believed Sean's story and decided not to contact Naomi anymore. 4 years passed and our family business thrived. Our works found buyers one after another. Our income and fame grew, and not just us, but our apprentices also celebrated the success. As time passed, some apprentices left to become independent, others joined, and we even found a successor to continue the family business, bringing us some peace of mind. However, we never forgot about Naomi. We were constantly worried about her well-being and safety, but we restrained ourselves, not wanting to scare her further, and avoided contact. Then, on an unbelievable day, an intense typhoon struck. As the wind and rain intensified, we took a break from work and stayed home. It had been a while since we could spend time together as a couple during a storm. Late into the night, while we were asleep, the doorbell suddenly rang, waking us up. It must have been around 1:00 a.m. Who could it be at this time of night? Isaac wondered, turning on the light and looking at me. I don't know, I replied, feeling a mix of anxiety and curiosity. We hesitantly moved toward the entrance. Isaac, gathering his courage, opened the door, and there stood an unexpected figure. Dad, Mom. Naomi's voice trembled as she spoke. To our disbelief, it was Naomi standing there with a child in her arms, a girl who had lost consciousness, undoubtedly our granddaughter. She's still alive, but she's in critical condition, Naomi said, her voice strained. As we took a closer look at Naomi, we noticed she was visibly pregnant. Are you pregnant again? I asked, my heart racing. 9 months, she replied, her voice barely a whisper while I struggled to keep my panic in check. I quickly realized that both the baby and Naomi were in immediate danger. Before diving into the details, I knew the most important thing was to get them to the hospital as soon as possible. Naomi, desperate and scared, pleaded, please call an ambulance. However, Isaac, caught off guard by the intensity of the situation, refused her request. What are you talking about? There's no way I can call one in this storm, he exclaimed, his frustration slipping out. But then, seeing the fear in Naomi's eyes, he softened. It's okay, I'll take you to the emergency room tonight. Unfortunately, Isaac had already been drinking and couldn't drive, so I stepped in. I quickly prepared the car and drove Naomi and her child to the hospital myself. Thankfully, we arrived swiftly, and she was able to receive the urgent medical attention she needed. The diagnosis was severe malnutrition for both Naomi and her child. They were immediately hospitalized and began receiving treatment. Thankfully, there was no major impact on the baby, and we felt a momentary relief, knowing they were in good hands. We decided to wait until Naomi had recovered before asking her for the full story. As we arrived at the hospital, Naomi lost consciousness during the examination. While waiting for Isaac to bring clothes for Naomi and her child, I stayed by her side, watching over her as she lay unconscious. The nurses assured me they would take care of her grandchild, which lightened my heart a bit. Looking at Naomi, I noticed the deep fatigue etched into her face. The dark shadows under her eyes told the story of sleepless nights and relentless stress. I had no idea what had happened to her after they moved, but it was clear that she had been through an overwhelming amount of hardship. I quietly watched over Naomi as she slept. Just after 11 a.m., she finally opened her eyes. Mom, she murmured. Naomi, I responded softly, relieved to see her awake. She looked slightly better than yesterday, perhaps due to the rest, but I still couldn't shake the worry. I called the nurse to inform them that Naomi had woken up, and after the doctor examined her, she returned to her room. I approached her quietly, unsure of how to begin. Naomi, are you okay? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She offered a calm smile and replied, Yes, I'm fine. Thank you, Mom. I'm relieved to hear that, but you really gave us a scare. I'm sorry, Mom. I must have troubled Dad too. He must have been shocked. We were shocked, but that doesn't matter. We're just worried about you. Naomi didn't seem afraid of us. Instead, she looked relieved. As she lay in bed, we continued our conversation. To us, she was still our beloved daughter, even though she had become Sean's wife. As parents, we couldn't stop worrying about why she had arrived in such an exhausted state and why she had come in the middle of the night. But we hesitated to pry too deeply, so I decided to wait until Naomi was ready to talk on her own. It was okay if she didn't say anything. Her feelings were our priority. As days passed, Naomi visibly regained her energy and began to smile more often. The tension of our reunion after so many years transformed into a sense of relief as she started to open up to us. One day, while visiting Naomi's hospital room with Isaac, we noticed she had a serious, contemplative look on her face. Curious about what was on her mind, we decided to act as usual, though her smile suggested something was different. Eventually, Naomi spoke up, her voice earnest. Can I talk about what happened after I moved? We were surprised by her sudden words, but it seemed Naomi had resolved to share her story. Of course, If you want to talk, we're here to listen, I assured her. Thanks. Then I'll begin. As Naomi started her story, we were astounded by what she revealed. Apparently, Sean was not the person she had thought he was. She had accepted his proposal, believing it would lead to happiness. After years of being in a relationship, she thought she knew him well. But after marrying him, she discovered his true nature. Sean was incredibly possessive, demanding her full attention at all times. He isolated her from her friends, prohibited her from doing anything outside of household chores, and forbade her from leaving the house. He even confiscated her smartphone, cutting off all her means of communication with the outside world. The last time Naomi had informed me about the birth of our grandchild was just before he seized her phone. Why didn't you seek help earlier? I asked, shocked. Naomi explained that she thought it would be futile. Sean had convinced her that we despised her and that he was the only one she could rely on. Admitting this left Naomi visibly shaken, and I felt a surge of sadness and anger on her behalf. Naomi had developed a deep fear of us, exacerbated by the severe restrictions imposed on her life. She wasn't allowed proper sleep and was given only a single piece of bread for her daily meal. Even the times she could use the bathroom were strictly controlled, and she wasn't permitted to leave her room outside those times. The extremity of her situation became evident from her harrowing account. Overwhelmed with guilt for raising her child in such dire conditions, Naomi resolved to flee. After seeing her child sleep lifelessly, she was driven by the desperate need to provide a better life. Despite believing her family might dislike her, she decided to return to her hometown for help. Acting swiftly, she sneaked out of the house and caught the last train to reach us. Hearing her confession made everything fall into place. To ensure she wasn't just afraid of us, we asked, and she shook her head in response. "He was lying to you too," she said. I replied, "It's easy to believe what you're told. I'm sorry I didn't notice anything sooner." We then contacted the police and filed a report. A female officer came to the hospital to gather details, and the police immediately raided Sean's house. However, he had already fled, likely in search of Naomi. The police increased patrols around the hospital and our home, anticipating his return. Weeks later, Naomi gave birth while still hospitalized and was discharged with her child. We breathed a sigh of relief at the arrival of the new life. With the family business left in the capable hands of apprentices and Isaac back at home, we felt more secure. Although the situation remained precarious, seeing Naomi smile like she used to filled us with happiness. We deeply hope for these peaceful days to continue, but reality often defies our expectations. One seemingly peaceful afternoon, while preparing lunch, a sudden noise came from the second floor where no one was supposed to be. Isaac, who had been relaxed, noticed the sound and said, "I'll go check upstairs." We would have ignored such a noise before, but ever since Naomi's incident, we had been living on high alert. I told Naomi and her children to stay close and watch for any signs of trouble, clutching my smartphone. Then a shout echoed from the second floor, "What are you doing?" It was clear there was a scuffle with an intruder.